It is splashed all over the papers and has been for a couple of weeks now, but there is some sympathy, of course, for Beatrice and Eugenie.
Royal calm has shattered as startling claims emerge from within the House of Windsor. In a revelation sending shockwaves through palace corridors, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie are said to have confided that their father, Prince Andrew, pressured them to remain silent during the darkest chapter of his scandal. Insiders speak of fear, loyalty, and impossible choices behind closed doors. If true, the allegations could redefine public sympathy and family dynamics. So, what really happened? And why are these voices only emerging now, with consequences that may shake the crown? A quiet reckoning. Sources close to Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie reveal that the sisters are quietly re-examining moments from their past. Conversations, decisions, and silences that once felt ordinary but now carry a heavier meaning. As they look back, they are said to be drawing conclusions that are both unsettling and deeply personal. What once seemed like isolated incidents now appear connected, forming a picture that is hard to ignore. According to an insider who spoke with People magazine, the sisters are piecing together these memories in real time. With each realization, a troubling thought has surfaced. They may not have been protected as they believed, but instead guided or even used in ways that served someone else's interests. That dawning awareness has reportedly cut deep. For Beatrice and Eugenie, the feeling is not just disappointment. It's a sense of betrayal that strikes at the core of trust. The emotional impact has been profound, leaving them heartbroken and struggling to reconcile what they once knew with what they are now coming to understand. Yet the situation is far from simple. The same source emphasizes that their relationship with their parents, especially their father, Prince Andrew, has not vanished overnight. Love, particularly the love between a child and a parent, does not switch off with a single revelation. It lingers, even when mixed with anger, confusion, and grief. For the princesses, this is described as an intensely painful and reflective period, one that forces them to sit with conflicting emotions at the same time: loyalty and hurt, affection and disillusionment. Amid this emotional storm, Beatrice and Eugenie are said to be choosing distance over drama. Rather than engaging directly with the ongoing turmoil surrounding their family, they are stepping back, creating space for themselves and for what matters most right now. Central to that decision are their children. As young mothers, their priorities have shifted, and their protective instincts are stronger than ever. The insider explains that they are making a deliberate effort to shield their families from the noise and tension, aware that this controversy touches someone who is not just a public figure, but their children's grandfather. This balancing act, acknowledging painful truths while safeguarding the next generation, is reportedly the hardest part. They are trying to process their own emotions privately, without allowing the weight of the situation to spill over into their homes. For them, protecting their children's sense of safety and normalcy comes first. Sources suggest that one of the most distressing elements of all has been the long-standing atmosphere of fear and silence that surrounded their father's behavior. Allegedly, past threats and pressure had a way of keeping uncomfortable questions unasked and difficult conversations buried long before the public legal reckoning began. Now, as that silence lifts, the sisters are left to confront not only what happened, but how it shaped their choices and voices over the years. In this moment, Beatrice and Eugenie are not seeking spectacle or sympathy. They are navigating a quiet reckoning, one defined by reflection, heartbreak, and a fierce determination to break cycles, protect their children, and move forward with greater clarity than before. Before the sisters reveal Andrew's threats that made them silent, did they stand behind or against him? What did the public say about the sisters and the family at large? Let's find out. A family divided. The scandal that unfolded around their father placed the two York sisters on very different emotional paths, revealing how deeply personal values, public pressure, and family loyalty can pull people in opposite directions. For Princess Eugenie, the situation struck at the core of who she had become as an adult. Long before the crisis reached its peak, she had already begun to distance herself from her father, both emotionally and physically. When the controversy intensified, she reportedly cut off contact with him for several months and chose not to spend Christmas in his company. This was not simply an act of anger or rebellion. It was by many accounts a deeply painful decision shaped by her principles. Eugenie has spent much of her professional life advocating against human trafficking and supporting vulnerable people whose voices are often ignored. Against that backdrop, her father's continued refusal to publicly apologize to victims felt especially distressing. To her, silence was not neutral. It carried weight. It clashed with the values she worked to promote every day. The gap between her public mission and her private reality became impossible to ignore, forcing her to draw boundaries that many found striking but understandable. Her older sister, Princess Beatrice, chose a different route, at least at first. For a long time, Beatrice appeared determined to stand by her father. She was seen alongside him in public, attended family gatherings with him, and even invited him to events during periods when criticism was at its loudest. To some, this looked like defiance. To others, it appeared to be loyalty rooted in love, duty, and a desire to protect a parent in crisis. But loyalty has its limits. Insiders now suggest that Beatrice's patience is wearing thin. Standing by someone in private is one thing, doing so under constant public scrutiny is another. Over time, the emotional cost of being associated with ongoing controversy can quietly build. What once felt like devotion can begin to feel like a burden, especially when it conflicts with one's own sense of right and wrong. Both sisters now find themselves walking a narrow and uneasy path. On one side lies family love and the natural instinct to protect a parent. On the other stand personal values, public opinion, and the reality that association itself can carry consequences. This collision creates an emotional maze with no clear exit, only difficult choices and imperfect outcomes. Royal observers have not been subtle about the risks involved. Some commentators argue that failing to clearly distance themselves could allow what they describe as toxicity to spread further, damaging the sisters' own reputations and future roles. One outspoken voice, Richard Fitzwilliams, went so far as to label the York family unit toxic, a harsh description that reflects just how fragile the situation has become. For Eugenie and Beatrice, the challenge is no longer just about their father's actions. It is about who they choose to be in response to them. Their contrasting reactions reveal not division, but two human ways of coping with the same painful reality, one through distance, the other through endurance. Both are now learning that in the public eye, even silence and loyalty speak loudly. Before Andrew's life got messy with his past scandals, what kind of life did Beatrice and Eugene live? How has it been affected by the unfortunate scandal? Let's delve into the details of the sisters' life before the scandal. A life carefully built, until the past strikes. For many years, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie appeared to have discovered a rare balance: how to live meaningful, modern lives while still carrying a royal title. In a world where royal missteps often become global headlines, the sisters chose a quieter, more deliberate path. They did not rely on palace duties alone. Instead, they stepped into the real world, built careers, and shaped identities that stood on their own. Beatrice leaned into strategy and business. She founded BYEQ, a firm focused on helping organizations think more clearly and act more effectively. Alongside this, she worked as a vice president at a technology company, showing that she was serious about understanding the fast-changing digital world. Her work signaled something important. Being royal did not mean being removed from modern challenges. She wanted to contribute, not simply observe. Eugenie took a different but equally purposeful route. She found her place in the art world, becoming a respected art director at Hauser and Wirth, one of the most influential contemporary art galleries in the world. Beyond art, she also co-founded the Anti-Slavery Collective, a group dedicated to fighting modern slavery and human trafficking. This was not a symbolic gesture. It was hands-on advocacy, driven by a desire to use her platform for real social good. Away from their professional lives, both sisters quietly built families. They married, welcomed children, and created homes that felt private and grounded. Unlike many members of their extended family, they managed to stay out of the daily churn of gossip and controversy. They were rarely splashed across tabloids, rarely dragged into public drama. Their lives suggested intention, carefully chosen words, carefully chosen appearances, carefully chosen causes. To many observers, Beatrice and Eugenie became symbols of what modern royalty could look like. They were professional without being flashy, compassionate without being performative, and visible without being intrusive. They seemed to understand an unwritten rule: influence works best when paired with restraint. For years, this approach appeared to shield them. While storms raged around the royal family, the sisters remained calm, steady, and largely untouched. But life has a way of reminding us that control is often an illusion. Just when it seemed they had successfully stepped outside the shadow of controversy, the past came knocking. Old connections, formed long before their carefully built adult lives, resurfaced in the public eye. These associations, buried under years of quiet work and discretion, were suddenly dragged into the spotlight. The story was no longer about what the sisters had done, but about who they had once been connected to. In an instant, the safety they had built through years of careful living felt fragile. The scandal was not of their making, yet it swept them in all the same. It served as a stark reminder. Even the most cautious lives can be shaken by history. And for Beatrice and Eugenie, the challenge was no longer about building a modern royal identity, but about protecting it when the past refuses to stay silent. What is Andrew's scandal all about? How was he exposed? Who made it a full-blown issue? What relationship did Andrew have with him? Let's dive into the details of the opening of a Pandora's box. The Epstein files. The controversy erupted quietly, but spread fast, triggered by the release of sealed records from the U.S. Department of Justice, tied to the long and troubling case of Jeffrey Epstein. When these documents became public, they didn't just reopen old wounds. They exposed unexpected names and connections that pulled new people into a story many thought was already settled. What stunned observers was not only how often Prince Andrew appeared in the files, but how frequently another royal figure surfaced as well: Sarah Ferguson. Her name appeared again and again, weaving a thread that led straight to her daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. Almost overnight, the two young women were thrust into global headlines, not because of anything they had done, but because of who they were connected to. The documents painted a deeply unsettling picture. According to the records, the princesses were said to have been physically present around Epstein when they were still teenagers. One account claimed they even traveled to lunch with him just days, 5 to be exact, after his release from prison in 2009. For many readers, this detail alone raised serious questions. Why would young members of the royal family be anywhere near a man with such a record, and so soon after his conviction? The concerns deepened when financial details emerged. The documents suggested that Epstein himself paid for the princesses' flights, with costs reaching nearly $15,000. This was not a casual gesture. It implied a level of involvement that felt far too close for comfort. While no wrongdoing was attributed to the young women, the idea that a convicted criminal was funding their travel shocked the public and fueled intense media scrutiny. Adding another layer to the unfolding drama were emails reportedly exchanged between Sarah Ferguson and Epstein. Some of these messages were described as warm or overly familiar in tone, which alone caused discomfort. But one email in particular stood out. It referenced Eugenie's personal life in a way that editors and commentators later described as deeply distressing. For many, the most painful part was imagining how it must have felt for the princesses to see themselves discussed so casually by their own mother with a man known for serious crimes. What made this situation especially troubling was the loss of control. Beatrice and Eugenie had no say in the choices made by adults around them. Yet, as the documents circulated and headlines multiplied, their names became tied, however indirectly, to one of the darkest scandals of modern times. Public curiosity quickly blurred into judgment, even though the records did not accuse the sisters of any misconduct. In the end, the story was less about guilt and more about exposure. Two young women found themselves pulled into a narrative shaped by the actions of others, forced to relive a past they never chose. The document release served as a stark reminder of how powerful associations can be, and how easily the consequences of one person's decisions can ripple outward, affecting lives that were never meant to be part of the storm at all. How did Andrew's scandal affect the royal family? Was the public's view of the royal family bruised? What about the relationships with Andrew? Let's dig into the details of how the scandal exposed the royal family to public scrutiny. Royal relationships under scrutiny. For years, public discussion around the scandal largely centered on Prince Andrew and his troubling links to Jeffrey Epstein. Whenever his former wife, Sarah Ferguson, was mentioned at all, it was usually only in passing, almost as an afterthought. Many assumed her involvement was minimal and casual, a mere background detail that held little weight in the larger story. But the release of a new collection of emails dramatically shifted that perception. Suddenly, the narrative looked very different. These messages suggested that the Duchess's connection to Epstein was far closer than previously believed, close enough to hint at warmth, familiarity, and perhaps even emotional attachment. What once seemed like a distant association began to appear more like an active relationship that unfolded over time. Some of the emails were especially startling. Reports revealed that one message allegedly ended with a surprisingly affectionate sign-off: "Marry me XXX kisses." Whether playful, sarcastic, or sincere, the tone raised eyebrows everywhere. It suggested a kind of closeness that went beyond polite friendship, making people wonder just how deep the relationship had been and how long it had lasted. Other emails added further weight to the developing picture. In some exchanges, the Duchess reportedly discussed sensitive family matters with Epstein. These messages included conversations about dealing with journalists, a topic both she and Prince Andrew were constantly grappling with due to their long, complicated history with the media. There were also mentions of holiday cards, including those featuring their daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. Such personal sharing hinted that Epstein was not just an acquaintance hovering on the edges of royal life, but someone who had been allowed, at least for a period, into more intimate family spaces. These revelations reshaped everything. For years, the public assumed that Beatrice and Eugenie's occasional closeness to Epstein at social gatherings was simply the result of their father's network. The girls' presence near the scandal seemed incidental, a coincidence of aristocratic circles overlapping with powerful people. But these newly uncovered details suggested something more complicated. Their proximity wasn't merely a product of social events or formal introductions. It appeared rooted in relationships formed by both parents. In other words, the princesses were not just brushed by Epstein's orbit, they were connected to him through trusted adults in their lives. And that realization changed the emotional tone of the story. It raised deeper questions about influence, vulnerability, and the unseen dynamics behind high-status friendships. This new understanding demanded a kind of reckoning. The once comfortable belief that the younger royals had been passive bystanders could no longer stand untouched. If their mother had built a warm and ongoing relationship with Epstein, then the environment surrounding the family at the time was more entangled than anyone had imagined. For the public, it also shifted how the scandal itself was viewed. Previously, the narrative rested heavily on Prince Andrew's choices. But now, attention broadened to include the larger ecosystem of relationships. People began asking, how much did the Duchess know? What role did she play? What did these long, friendly exchanges reveal about the wider social world Epstein moved in? How many doors were opened to him not by power alone, but by trust, charm, and personal bonds? In the end, the newly surfaced emails did more than add details to an old scandal. They redrew its borders. They reminded the world that stories involving powerful families are rarely as simple as they seem, and that the private connections shaping public events often lie hidden until a moment of unexpected revelation forces them into the light. Was there a moment that might have inspired the sisters to speak up? What happened, and how did it affect Beatrice? Let's take a look at the interview that defeated its purpose. Lessons from a disastrous interview. The 2019 television interview given by Prince Andrew has since stood as a powerful warning within the royal family, a lesson written in real time, under bright studio lights, and replayed endlessly across the world. What was meant to be a moment of repair instead became a turning point that reshaped lives, reputations, and future decisions about speaking to the public. At the heart of the story is a decision driven by hope, rather than harm. The interview did not come out of nowhere. Behind the scenes, there was a belief that silence was no longer working, and that the only way forward was to speak directly, clearly, and calmly. Princess Beatrice, Andrew's daughter, was reportedly involved in helping arrange the interview. The intention was simple and human, to create a controlled space where her father could explain himself, answer questions, and perhaps put the growing storm to rest. The logic seemed sound. If accusations were spreading, why not face them head-on? If the media was already talking, why not take charge of the narrative? In theory, a carefully planned interview could draw a line under the controversy. In reality, it did the opposite. Once the cameras started rolling, control slipped away. Andrew's responses appeared hesitant, defensive, and at times detached from public feeling. Rather than easing concerns, his words raised new questions. Small details, statements meant to clarify, were pulled apart, analyzed, and amplified. Within hours, the interview had shifted from a defense to a disaster. The public reaction was swift and unforgiving. What followed was one of the strongest backlashes faced by a senior royal in modern times. Headlines around the world replayed key moments, social media exploded with criticism, and public trust eroded further with each replay. Instead of restoring credibility, the interview deepened doubt. The outcome was clear. Andrew stepped away from public duties, and the interview became a symbol of what can go wrong when public communication fails. For Beatrice, this was not an abstract lesson. It was deeply personal. She watched how a single appearance, lasting less than an hour, could overshadow decades of status and service. She saw how words spoken once could live forever online, stripped of context and replayed endlessly. Most importantly, she learned that good intentions offer no protection when public perception turns. This experience left a lasting mark. It highlighted the unpredictable nature of media exposure, where even careful planning cannot guarantee safety. Once a story enters the public space, it no longer belongs to the speaker. It becomes shaped by commentators, critics, and audiences far removed from the emotional reality of those involved. These lessons mattered deeply when Beatrice and her sister later faced questions about telling their own stories. Should they speak openly? Should they stay silent? Could sharing their perspective bring understanding or invite new scrutiny? The memory of 2019 hovered over these decisions like a warning sign. Speaking publicly may look empowering, but it comes with serious risks. Personal pain can become public debate. Private emotions can turn into headlines. And once words are released, they cannot be taken back. For the sisters, the stakes were not just about reputation, but about family, loyalty, and emotional safety. In the end, The 2019 interview remains more than a media moment. It is a reminder that visibility can be dangerous, that silence can sometimes be safer than speech, and that telling one's story, especially under intense public attention, is never a simple choice. Why would the sisters be willing to speak at this moment? Have they been personally affected by their father's damaged reputation? Let's delve into the details of the inevitable choice. Speak or remain silent. The rumors are loud, persistent, and tempting. According to reports, offers for tell-all interviews and major media deals, ranging from high-profile sit-downs to exclusive streaming projects with companies like Netflix, have been placed before Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. For many public figures, such offers would be a chance to speak freely, reclaim the narrative, and perhaps even find relief. But for these two women, the decision is anything but simple. They are painfully aware that speaking now could come at a devastating cost. Silence, though heavy, feels safer. Any public statement, no matter how carefully worded, could later be challenged by future document releases, leaked records, or unfolding investigations. A single sentence taken out of context, a small detail remembered differently, could unravel everything. In a story this complex, even an innocent misstep might be seen as a lie, and the fallout could be irreversible. What makes the moment even more fragile is the wider storm surrounding their father, Prince Andrew. His arrest in February 2026 on suspicion of misconduct in public office, as widely reported, dramatically raised the stakes. It marked the first arrest of a senior British royal in nearly 3 centuries, an almost unthinkable event that signaled just how far this saga has spiraled beyond private family trouble into historic territory. With that, the margin for error disappeared entirely. For Beatrice and Eugenie, this is not just a public relations dilemma. It is a deeply personal struggle. They did not choose the circumstances that now define their lives. Yet they are expected to carry them with perfect grace, endless patience, and unwavering composure. Silence, in this sense, becomes both shield and chain. It protects them from immediate backlash, but it also traps them inside a story they cannot correct, clarify, or soften. Each new revelation in the press tightens the pressure. Every headline adds another layer of expectation. Speak now, explain yourself, take a side. And with every day they remain quiet, the weight grows heavier. People begin to project their own assumptions onto that silence, some interpreting it as loyalty, others as fear, and still others as complicity. None of these labels are fair, yet all of them stick. Behind palace walls and public smiles are two women navigating grief, confusion, and an identity crisis forced upon them. How do you remain yourself when the world only sees you through someone else's scandal? How do you honor family bonds without sacrificing personal truth? And how long can anyone be expected to endure the consequences of decisions they never made? There is also the haunting question of timing. If they speak too early, they risk contradicting facts that have yet to emerge. If they wait too long, their voices may be dismissed as calculated or overdue. The window for telling their story, if such a window even exists, feels both urgently close and dangerously uncertain. In an age where news travels faster than reflection, where headlines race ahead of facts, restraint can look like weakness. But it can also be a form of quiet strength. For Beatrice and Eugenie, choosing silence may be the only way to preserve a sense of control in a situation that has stripped so much of it away. Still, the question lingers, growing louder with time. Can two women remain true to themselves while living under the long shadow of another person's actions? Will there come a moment when speaking feels safer than staying silent? And if that day arrives, will the world be willing to listen, not to the scandal, but to the human cost behind it? So what do you think about Beatrice and Eugenie's revelation? Are they right to have ditched loyalty for peace? We'd love to hear your opinions in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.